After sitting on the shelf in a completed, near ready-to-be-released state for 2 years, Red Sonja finally lands distribution. But while that may sound like good news, it is in fact very, very bad news. Let's see why. Before we get into the problems with the distribution deal now at hand, let's go through the official news release, which comes to us from industry publication Deadline Hollywood, and their piece, Red Sonja Reboot Gets UK Deal and is planned for release later this year. The write-up reads, exclusive. The long-gestating Red Sonja reboot has been sold to the UK, where it's due for release later this year, after 2 years in post. Signature Entertainment has picked up UK and Irish rights to the action fantasy film from Millennium Media, which has previously sold the movie in multiple international markets, but a first release date has yet to be revealed. Based on the best-selling comic book series, the fantasy follows barbarian huntress Red Sonja, who must unite a group of unlikely warriors to face off against the evil tyrant Emperor Dragan and his deadly bride Dark Anicia. MJ Bassett directs. And jumping forward a bit, different versions were in development for at least 20 years prior to this iteration, as different writers, directors, and financiers grappled with the project. The 1985 original starred Brigitte Nielsen, and jumping forward some more, the deal was negotiated between Signature Entertainment's acquisitions manager Begum Kaisan Parodi and Millennium Media's president of international sales and distribution, J.J. Nugent. Parodi said, Red Sonja epitomizes the kind of film we're looking for at Signature, an epic story in a fantasy-laden world with a strong commercial feel to its execution, which made it immediately appealing to us. We're looking forward to introducing UK and Irish audiences to Matilda Lutt's sword-swinging Huntress later this year. Okay, that all sounds good. The UK now has distribution, so does various other international markets. But what about the US? Therein lies the problem, because exactly as we have surmised in multiple past Red Sonja videos, and I do believe our videos on this topic provide the most extensive coverage on the development of this movie available anywhere, this is now Solomon Kane all over again. Ignore the movie itself for the moment, we'll get back to that, but for now, let's explore the Solomon Kane situation. Solomon Kane is a criminally underrated 2009 sword and sorcery feature film based on the Robert E. Howard character starring James Purefoy, also directed by M.J. Bassett, the director of this very Red Sonja. Since Solomon Kane was made so soon after Batman Begins and Casino Royale, the producers of the time demanded the story be an origin story just like those, and not an adaptation of any of the original Robert E. Howard Solomon Kane stories. Those would be saved for the sequels, as the first movie was an intended trilogy starter. Bassett was able to work with this and crafted a wonderful origin story that perfectly set up adaptations of Howard's original stories later to come. Alas, it is one of the great tragedies of cinema that the sequels never happened. So why didn't they, when the first movie clearly delivered, at least from a creative point of view? Well, that is entirely down to the business and politics side of things, and more specifically, the distribution side of things. Solomon Kane was made outside of the studio system. For all intents and purposes, it was an independent film, and a foreign independent film at that, as it was made by French indie production company Davis Films in conjunction with the film division of book publisher Wandering Star. If they had been able to sell Solomon Kane to one of the major US distributors, like how Davis Films were able to sell their earlier 2006 movie Silent Hill to Sony, there would have been no issue, or at the very least, less of an issue, as then there would be a major US release that all other various international distributors could siphon off on and recycle the promotional material from. Case in point, Silent Hill was released by a number of different distributors around the world, yet they all recycled the trailers, posters, and other promotional material that Sony made for the US release, as everyone else built their local release on the far grander US release. Alas, that never happened for Solomon Kane. It sat on the shelf in a completed state for years, while the producers desperately tried to sell it to one of the major US distributors, but alas, none were interested. In the end, the production company couldn't wait any longer and had to release it without any US distribution. That meant the international distribution which already was on board, namely the French and UK distribution, both had to create their own marketing material and treat it as a lesser local film, without that huge boost of US distribution. Then all the other international distributors saw it as little more than an indie direct-to-video movie, which is how they treated it and the only price they paid for it. When Solomon Kane eventually, and much later, was picked up for release in the US, it was given the direct-to-video release strategy there as well, treated as a lesser independent foreign film. Which technically it was, although it presented as a major studio film, because that is what it was created to be. But, alas, the distribution side of things just never facilitated that happening. Then it didn't help that Solomon Kane was far better than a lot of movies from the other major distributors. They never picked it up. And so, just like Dread a few years later, it was screwed, doomed to indie circles of release hell. Circling back to Red Sonja, the situation is pretty much exactly the same. The movie is made by Millennium, for all intents and purposes a foreign indie company. That a UK distributor, and an indie UK distributor at that, now being announced as the first distributor, suggests that history has repeated itself all over again, and this Red Sonja is likely to go the way of Solomon Kane. I say likely, with the small hedge that there is of course the hypothetical possibility that Lionsgate or someone could swoop in at the last moment and pick up the US rights, give it a major domestic release, and then all the other distributors around the world could siphon off of that, making the movie a hit. However, the movie has been completed for 2 years now, and no distributor has picked it up in that time. Which suggests that just like Solomon Kane before it, we're hearing about this UK release now because production company Millennium has all but given up. What does that mean? Well, it means that unless a major US distributor shows, then like Solomon Kane before it, Red Sonja will be getting a limited theatrical release in the UK, and more likely than not, direct-to-video or even direct-to-streaming releases in most other territories. And because of the patchwork of distributors, sequel prospects are slim to none. So, what went wrong? Why wouldn't any major US distributor pick this movie up? We obviously don't know for sure, but my speculation would be that after multiple different iterations of the movie were in development for almost 2 decades, it was, in the end, made just a little bit too soon. While Bassett did tone down the wokeness considerably from some of the more activist past iterations, which we covered in earlier videos, they still made and tried to sell what presents as a girl boss movie in a marketplace where the audience completely and utterly has rejected such movies. Consider, they've been trying to sell this since The Marvels flopped, and they tried selling it still when Madam Web, Furiosa, and Borderlands flopped as well. That's pretty bad timing right there, because Red Sonja was always, and should always be, the she-devil with a sword. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments.